What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the L.I.F.E Podcast, also known as Learn Informal Education. I'm here today with my very, very special guest, Brad Dantonio. He has been a true mentor, influencer for me. I found out about him through Bigger Pockets. He has just changed my perspective on life in general. So I know Brad, but Brad, for those people that don't know you, how about you give them an introduction of, just some background information?
I was born in this area about an hour southwest of New Orleans, an hour's drive. And then at age 12, my parents divorced and I was forced to move in with my dad about a year later. So I lived in Houston for high school and then was recruited to play baseball in college at Nicholls State University in Louisiana. And then after college, figuring there was more opportunity in a big city, I moved back to Houston.
Okay.
I've been there since.
What were you going to college for? Obviously baseball, but what were you studying?
Primarily baseball. I thought I was going to be a big leaguer, much like most college players, but I studied business, so I have a degree in marketing.
Okay. I guess that was kind of going to be my follow-up question as well. Like, I understand after college, you went directly into real estate sales. Is that the job that you went into, or what did you do right after college?
Correct. Right after college, I took hourly work working for a real estate inspector, and he had me doing some serious manual labor like digging ditches or at least trenches around houses so that they could be sprayed for termites.
Oh, okay.
And it was in the August heat, and I can remember getting into Epsom salt baths after my work because my body was hurting so much and I was in the best shape of my life. So just that gives you an idea of how taxing the work was.
Yeah.
But from there, I was going to real estate school so that I could get my real estate license because I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was at a free agent baseball tryout, and one of the guys that was fielding fly balls with me said that he was going to go into real estate. And I said, oh, that sounds good. I like that too. So that's how I kind of got the idea to go into real estate, and then found out that I had a family friend who was in the business. And so pretty much offered to be his gopher and did a sort of apprenticeship, and he paid me to do some hourly work. And then I was able to start to gain my own clients once I got my license and went from there.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I guess a lot of people think that you have to go to college in order to get into real estate. So that's kind of was why I wanted to ask you that, because usually some people just go directly straight out of high school to full-time real estate sales. So I kind of wanted to know why you went to college, but it makes sense now because you went for baseball, correct?
Yeah, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I always had this vision of being a businessman. Even when I was in kindergarten, I envisioned working in a skyscraper in a tall building and wearing a suit and conducting business, giving presentations in boardrooms. And so I always knew that I would be in sales in some capacity just because I like people and I like to serve people and help them find solutions to their problems. But you're absolutely right. I didn't need a degree to do what I did.
So then what made you go from real estate sales to, hey, let me switch the mode to start investing?
When you're in real estate, it's easy to see the value of owning versus renting because of equity buildup. And I was at that time reading books like The Richest Man in Babylon and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And those changed my life. They set me on a trajectory of saving and investing a high portion of my income and trying to pay off that first house that I bought in 2003 free for $80,000. At that time, they were getting loans that were, they called liar loans because people were lying about their income in order to get a loan. And I didn't have to lie. I was asked, how much do you think you will make this year? And I said $50,000. And based on that reasoning, they gave me a $72,000 loan. And that was how I got started in investing. I got a roommate to help me pay half the mortgage at least. And that didn't even have a name at that time. You know, I think Bigger Pockets coined the term house hacking. I think they started that. So there are a lot of things that I realize after the fact, like FIRE, financial independence. There are a lot of things that I realize after it's given a label. Oh, wait a minute, I'm one of those. I did that. So
what age did you find your financial independence?
It's tough to say. Like when I was in my 20s, what I used to like to do is if I was, let's say I had a net worth of $60,000, I would like to see if something were to happen to me, if I were in a major accident, how long could I go without an income? And this is in the early days of the internet, so there weren't thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of ways to make money online. So I always thought, well, if I was incapacitated, how long could I live? And so with this mindset and with me counting my expenses, every single expense, it was easy to see that, oh, well, I'm spending $2,000 a month. That means I could live, if I have $50,000, that means I can live X amount of months.
Okay.
Right? That would be 24, two years and a month. Yeah. So I would do little things like that. So I didn't actually try to figure out when exactly I was financially independent. It was just a matter of once I had enough passive income to exceed my expenses, that is financial independence, right? Mm-hmm. So I went to work I actually had the goal of acquiring 10 rental properties that would provide $140,000 a year. And when I quit my job when I was 34, I actually had the intention of coming back because I only had 5 properties at that time. And so I was going to continue pursuing my goal of 10. Okay. And it was a sort of arbitrary goal. I mean, I just thought that it sounded nice. 10 houses, easy to manage, $140,000. I can live on that. Nice. I can support a family. Yeah. So that's sort of where I got the idea.
Okay, so then I guess that kind of brings me into my next question. For you to find your financial independence, what does your portfolio consist of? Those 5 properties, correct?
Well, that's what covers my expenses.
Okay, yeah. So this podcast here, I don't want to dive all the way into your real estate thing because that's literally what they did on Bigger Pockets. I just wanted to kind of give the listeners a little bit of background about who you are, how you find financial independence. And I want to give the listeners the top things that I learned from you and from your success just from that interview. So I kind of want to dive into a couple things that I learned from the podcast on Bigger Pockets that you did. And to teach really, I'm 23 years old. People my age, the statistic shows the average person doesn't buy a house until they're 32 years old. That's the statistic. So people my age, I would say from right after high school till really end of college, their main goal is pretty much just partying, drinking, spending. So one thing that I learned from you is during this journey, during your success, I want you to tell the people, how was your spending habits? How was your monthly budget per se? How did you get to that?
Well, my mortgage payment was roughly $1,000 on an $80,000 house. And the reason it was that much, I'm including the HOA payment because it was a condo. So my roommate paid about $500 a month. So then my monthly out of pocket was only $500. And since I was in the habit of eating a certain diet, and living a certain way in college, I just continued to live that way. And the idea was to save and invest as much money as possible, keeping my expenses low in order to do that while I'm building skill sets when I'm young so that I can earn later and accelerate paying off this house and then acquiring my next one.
So did you come up with your basic needs, and then after anything over your basic needs went directly into your savings, or went directly to quadruple or double the mortgage payments?
Well, it's a great question. You first must figure out what lifestyle you want to live. And by lifestyle, I mean monthly expenses.
Okay.
So I wanted to continue to live the college kid lifestyle. It was easy for me. I didn't even feel like I was sacrificing. And as long as I'm not concerned what other people think of me in terms of, oh, he has a college degree now, is he making $70,000? Well, I don't care what people think that I'm driving or where I'm living. It's all about me. And that might sound selfish, but I think it's ideal when you just compete with yourself. That is who you want to compete with. So look up, not around. Look in your journal, not at everybody's Instagram. So you can see in your journal what it is that you wanted to accomplish when you were 22, and then you can harness what you learned when you were 22 and see how you can get better for when you're 23. And my lifestyle remained the same through those years because I didn't care what anybody what anybody thought of me. And I'm just concerned about building skill sets so that my income can go up and my expenses can stay low. So the only way that my expenses increased were I had to pay for my own health insurance. I had a small car payment. I had this mortgage. And then I would get a Sam's Club membership and I would go buy meat for the week and I would prepare my meals and I would eat a lot of ramen noodles. I very rarely ate out. I very rarely went out because when you go to the bars, a lot of times you're spending $70 on drinks, and
Yeah, $15 a drink nowadays at a bar.
that's just nuts.
Yeah.
So it would be very rare that I would step foot in a bar if it costs $15 to have a drink. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. What I think one thing you just went over is the very first thing that every a person coming out of college decides to buy. They just got a new job, big, they call it the big boy job or big girl job, and they want to reward themselves. So they purchase themselves a brand new car.
Yes.
So what was your car
Yes.
during this time? Because you
I
said it was a
drove,
small car payment, correct?
yeah, it was $173.
That is very
It was
small.
it was a used Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Okay. Okay. So nothing foreign, nothing flashy. Because I mean, I see people my age that are driving a Mercedes, whatever it is, and then I look into their finances when I'm doing their budget, and it's a $600 to $700 car payment, and that's not even including insurance.
Yeah, a fancy car. Tell us whether you make $60,000 or $600,000. So you just have to be mindful that even when people are driving fancy cars, they're not gaining respect of people. People usually see you in that car and think, man, I would look good in that car. They're too focused on themselves even when they see you in the car. So
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
matter of, I mean, yeah, you'll get a lot of, wow, I love your car. And you say thank you. And then that's it. That emotion wears off very quickly. So the faster you can get to paying cash for your cars, the smarter you are. And I think once you get to paying cash, you'll never go back. You'll never a car payment will never be acceptable to you again.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. So I listened to your podcast, like I said, 10, 15 to 20 times. And then I actually got a hold of the Set for Life book, and I read it. And I did exactly that. I had a two-door Lexus. I paid $28,000 for it. My car payment was $500 and my insurance was 250, 270. And I said, I'm preaching to these people what to do, and here I am being a hypocrite by doing just what I'm preaching. So I ended up I had it for 8 months, I believe the car was. I owed 25,000 and I sold it on Craigslist for 24,800. So I came out of pocket
Nice.
$200. I'm sorry. So I went and after I sold the car, I went and bought a 2011 Nissan Rogue for $4,000 cash. I
Good for you.
don't have a car payment, but people just seen me in a two-door Lexus, and now I'm driving a Nissan Rogue that is kind of considered a mom's car. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
you know who told me, hey, you have a nice car, or hey, you have a mom's car now? Nobody. Nobody really cares what kind of car you drive. So I think it's exactly what you said about it's you versus you. If you have your goal in mind, you had 10 properties as your goal. Mine, like I said, was from 19 to 20. I mean, from 19 to 30 to purchase as many properties as you can, and then that's it. And by now focusing on my goal, I changed my goal based off of your lesson of time wealth. And now I have a goal. So now I'm okay with kind of what I want to bring into the next segment, which is delayed gratification. I read a blog post from you about your Porsche, your dream Porsche that you wanted to buy. Can you share the listeners with that? Oh man, that was just an amazing blog post.
I wanted a Porsche my entire life. I had a picture of a Porsche on my wall, a poster when I was 7, 8 years old. I even asked my dad if we could get one, and he pretty much laughed at me and said that we couldn't afford it. And so I decided when I was an adult, I was going to get myself a Porsche. And then by the time I was 30 years old, I started researching getting a Porsche. And the one that I liked was about $80,000. And it's exactly how much money I had in liquid savings. And I went to the Porsche dealership and I didn't like the sales guy that I was dealing with and told him I would give it some thought, sleep on it. And I stopped at the gas station on the way home and was just looking through my emails and I saw that I had one. It was an auto notification that a property that matched my rental property criteria, it fit that rental property criteria that I was looking for: 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single story, about 1,400 square feet. And the price of it was like 69 or 72,000, something like that. And I thought, I can buy this Porsche, which is going to depreciate in value as soon as I drive it off the lot, or I could buy this asset that if I pay cash for it will provide monthly cash flow of like $800 or $900. And sure enough, I decided to buy the real estate property. That was in 2010, I believe. And we didn't know it at the time, but that was sort of a bottom for the market. When you're living through it, you don't know what the market's going to do. I take the position that I try not to speculate. I just take what the market gives me. And so at that time, the houses that were selling for about 120, 130, 140 in 2005, 2006, 2007, when the recession hit in December 07, those property values dropped significantly to like 60, 65,000. So I think the market was actually starting to rebound a little bit. And I pulled the trigger knowing that the guys and girls down the street who were buying investment properties were getting a higher return, right? Because if you paid 60,000 and you're getting $900 a month, that's a significantly higher return than somebody who's paying 72,000 and is getting $900 a month. And I've got to tell you, that was something I had to overcome. It's a psychological barrier when you're concerned about the nameless, faceless investor down the street who's getting a much higher yield. but this just enables me to focus on my own journey once I've overcome this psychological barrier. And so I take to my journal and I see, well, it's me I'm competing with. I don't care about the guy down the street. So that was something that I was mindful of.
Do you
And I
think
pulled the trigger on the property, and the amount of income, as you know, if you read the article, it's provided something like $180,000 to
Yeah,
me
it was
in
it
both
was mind
equity
blowing.
appreciation and monthly income from 108 rental property, 108 monthly rental payments.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. Yeah, when I read that blog post, I was it just baffled me because I'm a huge car guy. I was grown up around cars. My dad always had a new car, all the time. And it doesn't get you to where you want, but I kind of think by you pulling the trigger of purchasing the property instead of the Porsche, do you agree that it was because of the previous cars that you were driving before looking to purchase that Porsche? You were
It's a
paying, you know what I mean?
it's a great question because you'll rarely find someone who goes down in car. People
Exactly.
almost always take a step up in car payment when they buy their next car. So I had a lot of luck with my previous purchase. And I say luck because this was not speculation. I couldn't have predicted this. But I had bought a little sports car in 2007. It was a little Nissan 350Z that I paid, I want to say 18,000 for. And when I sold it 3 years later, I got 14,500 for it. So I had
Not
driven
bad.
it for 3 years and only taken about a $3,500 hit in
Yeah, you rented it.
depreciation
You rented it for that long.
for 100 a month, right?
Yeah.
So that was really good. So that combined with the fact that I was now working 2 jobs, software and real estate, and I had the money, things were looking good for me. And so I thought, this is it. Like 30 years old is the perfect time. But I I was also wrestling with rules that I was trying to live by. For example, I do not think that you should purchase luxuries with earned income. I think that luxuries should only be purchased with passive income. So if you're tempted to do it, if you're tempted to buy the beautiful Porsche, make sure that you have enough passive income coming in to cover the payment. So if you have several rental properties and they provide, let's say, $1,400 a month, and you want to buy a Porsche for $1,200 a month, by all means, you will have made a rule for yourself that you can now abide by and buy the Porsche. But what I think happens is the same thing happens when you retire early. If you have the discipline and fire inside to retire early, you're more than likely not going to lay in a hammock and sip margaritas all day. It
Yeah,
just
yeah.
doesn't work that way. So if you have the discipline and fire inside to acquire several rental properties that provide the passive income to buy the Porsche, once you get there, you're not going to want the Porsche anymore.
Yeah, it's the Dave Ramsey rule of if you save your car payment every month up to the car that you want to purchase, and when you have that amount of money, you end up not wanting to buy that car anymore because of all that hard-earned money you just saved.
That's a good point. And I wanted to bring up another point too about when you do drive a nice car, because I did probably buy a car that I shouldn't have. When you pick up a date in one of those cars, I remember thinking that I wish that I drove a lesser car
Why do you
because
say that?
it felt pretentious. It felt like it may be perceived as if I'm compensating for something,
Ah,
even
okay.
though you may have $1 million liquid in the bank and buy a $100,000 Maserati. But nobody out there can tell the difference between whether you're one of these people who is trying to show off or if you've only spent 10% of your liquid net worth on a car, right?
Yeah,
And if you're
yeah,
going out with significantly younger women, as I was, I kind of felt like that douchebag that tries to buy a fancy car to impress people.
yeah.
So I just remember having that thought, I kind of wish I drove a Camry. I would feel cooler. I would feel like a cooler guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If for all they know, they probably think, oh, this guy's just renting this car for tonight.
True, right. And you're going to attract what you become. And so what kind of woman do you want? Assuming you're heterosexual, I don't know. But if you're a
Yeah.
heterosexual man, what kind of woman do you want to attract? The one who's attracted to the Lamborghini or the Maserati, or the one who is more attracted to?
To you and not about the material items. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that makes 100% complete sense. Um, so one thing that I wanted to hit on that I felt is a dire need to teach my generation and younger is during your journey, there was something you pointed out in the Bigger Pockets podcast that really stuck with me as well. It was whether or not you hate or love your job, to still be the best person you can be at that job, or for that matter, if you're trying to get into something new, how can I take the competitive advantage over someone that's been doing this job particularly for a long time? So I feel I know for me, I'm a millennial. A lot of people coming out of college, they're okay with just getting $40,000 to $45,000 worth of student loan debt, going into a job that pays them $35,000 a year, and they kind of just skate away. They kind of just get comfortable with having their own apartment, having a nice car, and get to go to the bar every once in a while on the weekends. So how, for someone that's wanting to get into a new career or a new job, or maybe they want to get into real estate, how can somebody always work harder than somebody that's been in the industry for a long time? You get what I'm trying to say?
I do. You should always do more than what's expected of you as an investment in your own future.
Okay.
Your question is, how can somebody work hard? Working
How
hard
can
is
someone kind of stand out compared to the others that have been in the industry, whatever industry that may be, longer than they have? They,
yeah,
rather than just skating by and being comfortable.
it's a good question, because young people oftentimes lack experience, and that will be used against them. However, your rebuttal should be that you don't measure experience in terms of time. So if you're going to negotiate a salary and your prospective boss says, well, I've got this guy on my team that has 12 years experience, you only have 2. While you can appreciate that, you do X, Y, and Z, and you've stacked X, Y, A, B, and C skill sets and combine those to create what you have become.
Yeah.
And the value that you offer stems from that, and your core beliefs of being someone who puts in more time than what's expected of you. So it's really hard to judge how much time somebody has put in, but I'm all about maximizing my time and adding value. And the ways that I've been able to do that are this, and this, and here my results have been this, and this.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love that. I kind of wanted to take from there. I was going to ask you the same question, but it's really going to lead into the next kind of segment of what I want to talk about, which is, from your success of your journey, what are the top 3 to 5 things that you think contributed to your success, and that you would, for people wanting to be successful, that they can take from your journey?
Number 1 is keep a journal. There are
Okay.
so many benefits, and I've written a blog article on manoverseas.com called Why You Should Use a Journal.
What goes in that journal?
A lot. You're going to, well, first, what's most important is to develop the habit. So even if you can only write 2 to 3 sentences per day, just make sure that you're taking time to do that. In this frantically paced world that we're living in, people aren't taking time to think. And writing is thinking. And so at a very minimum, it gives you 2 to 3 minutes to collect your thoughts and articulate them enough to put them on paper. So your early journals are going to look like crap. You should be embarrassed by what you put in there 2 to 3 years from now. If you're not, it means you haven't grown. And your journal is the best tool that I can think of for growth. So I would put in my journal, I would just start with what I did that day. It'll probably interest you 5 or 10 years from now. Beyond that, you want to put what your goals are and who you met and what you talked about and why that's
with
important.
that person.
Yes. And I would always underline their name, because there's nothing more important to people than their name. To each person, their name is the sweetest sound in the English language.
Yeah.
So be that person who remembers everyone's name. When you hear someone say, I'm terrible with names, that makes you no different from everybody else who hates
yes.
Mondays, or who hates moving, or who hates leg day at the gym. Just in every way, you want to be different. You don't want to be like the unwashed masses who complain about the same things.
Yeah, I like that.
In fact, you're not a complainer at all, right? You're a learning machine.
Yes.
You constantly are looking for ways to be of value and be productive. And that's the sort of thing that creates a fulfilling life. And you can journal about all of this. And what journaling enables you to do is to become a student of your own life and become more objective and monitor your own behavior and study human nature. So another thing that I did in my 20s, I would take 6 months and I would pick a topic like negotiating or public speaking, and I would study it for 6 months. I would gather a bunch of books on the topic, and my journal then becomes my notebook for study. And I'm highlighting in books, and I'm writing passages down, and I'm writing down my favorite quotes. So I have a section on my blog called Favorite Quotes.
Uh-huh.
That took no thought whatsoever. I just opened up my journals, flipped through, and just said, oh, these are my favorite quotes in all these different categories. So all of these quotes I've revisited so many times through the years that I've internalized them so that they become part of my character. So to give you an example, one of my favorite quotes is from Catherine Mansfield. She says, regret is an appalling waste of energy. You cannot build on it. It's only good for wallowing in. So What is that? Yeah, it's so powerful, because anytime a thought of regret enters your mind, you can flash that quote because it's internalized, and you think, wow, why would I live with regrets? Yeah, it's only for wallowing in. I can't build on it in any way. So then you push that thought out. And I think if you journal, it helps you to create this sort of mentality that will help you build an incredible future. So that's number one that I would do. The second thing I would do if I was a young person and I aspired to become more than I currently am, I would set goals and put deadlines on them, and I would celebrate success if I achieved that goal, and I would put it on myself if I didn't. So
before you go into that, I have a question on that. So I set goals, okay? I set goals, and when you say celebrate your goals, when I accomplish my goal, I tend to say, cool, check mark.
I'm just getting
started.
On to
the next one.
I understand.
So obviously continue on what you were going to say, but at the end of what you're saying, can you also explain what the definition of celebrating a goal means? And that doesn't mean go and spend $500 at a bar, and have fun. But what does celebrating a goal mean, and being like, okay, boom, now time to the next one? You know what I mean?
Sure. So you mentioned Dave Ramsey earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Ramsey is a big proponent of paying off your smallest debt first. I think whether you decide to pay off your smallest debt first or pay off your highest interest rate debt first depends entirely on your psychological makeup. Because the reason he's telling you to pay the smallest debt off first is entirely psychological. It doesn't make financial sense. And the reason I say it's psychological is because he advocates for doing that because it helps you to build momentum toward achieving the next goal, which is paying off the next highest debt.
Makes sense.
Well, what if your psychological makeup is such that you don't need to trick your brain in that way? You don't need to create momentum. You're disciplined enough to where you don't have to follow to the letter the Dave Ramsey plan. What he's telling you to do is what he has seen works for most people. Well, we've already talked about you're not like most people. Most people aren't keeping a journal and setting goals and doing all the other stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
So you have to get to know yourself, and this is what a journal enables you to do. You'll get to know yourself really well, and then you can make little rules for yourself. Like, if I achieve this goal, then I am going to spend $500 at the bar if that's your thing. But you know whether or not you could handle something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Or maybe it's just buy a steak dinner for yourself for $50. Or maybe your goal doesn't even have to be indulgence. It could be, if I achieve this goal, I'm going to sponsor a kid in sub-Saharan Africa for $13 a month. It doesn't matter. It's you and what brings you joy. You just want to make sure that you're getting in the habit of celebrating your wins, because part of life is living. And if you get too obsessed with this saving and investing, then you get hit by a truck when you're 33.
What have you done? Yeah.
Right. Jesus Christ died when he was 33. He packed a lot of good living in 33 years. We don't know how much time we're going to get.
No, that's great.
So
yeah, I love that.
Even if you get a big, let's say you're in sales and you have a month where you make $10,000, you may be tempted to save and invest the entire check, but I would tell you to make sure that you have a goal to spend windfalls, at least a little bit of it. Like, maybe you have a rule that if you get a windfall, you're going to force yourself to spend 20% of it, because part of life is living. And so force yourself without guilt to spend 20% of that $10,000.
I like that a lot. I love that. So that was number 2, goals. And one more. Just give me one more.
You will differentiate yourself if you become a book lover. Many people think that they read, they say that they read, but they are not reading. And this isn't a vanity metric thing where I've got to read 100 books and I'm going to tell people that I've read X amount of books. Reading forces you to think and reflect in ways that other activities do not. And you're feeding your brain with the author's best structured thoughts that he probably devoted a year and a half of his life to making sure that the ideas that he put in that book are easy to digest. So when you're reading, it almost feels like you're not reading. That's how hard the author is working to put his life's work, his best work, into a book. And the fact that he devoted so much time to it, and it's only $15 to $20 to buy the book. Some of it you can get from apps like Libby, or you can borrow from friends, so you don't even have to pay for it. But even if you do have to pay for it, the fact that you could pay $15 to $20 for somebody who devoted so much of his time to properly structuring sentences for you to easily digest it, it's hard to fathom, because books like The Richest Man in Babylon and Rich Dad Poor Dad I can't imagine how much that has added to my life. I mean, it's hard to put a price on. So reading books will make you smarter. It'll increase your vocabulary. It will force you to think and reflect. It will come out in your discussions. People will notice, wow, that guy's done some extra reading. There's just so many benefits to it, and just knowledge and connecting knowledge, because knowledge compounds. So once you read Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Richest Man in Babylon, then once you get to The Millionaire Next Door and The Millionaire Mind, all of it's going to make more sense.
Yep. Yes, 100% agree on that. I just read Richest Man in Babylon. Literally just finished it maybe 4 or 5 days ago. And it's exactly what you said. Everything that I've been reading, I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read The Millionaire Next Door. And it's exactly what you said. It starts to all make sense. And you tend in your conversations to, oh, hey, I read that in a book. Oh, hey, you should read this book. And it's funny. I think a lot of people think, I don't have time to read. Me personally, never read a book in high school. I never read one book, and I hate reading. So what I do, if I read a book, I'm going to fall asleep. I promise you. So I just download Audible. I have a long commute to work. And it's the same thing. You're reading a book, and I tend to grasp more information when I listen to things, just like with podcasts and audiobooks. And I think for those people that say I don't have time, I think it's about making the priority to make some time in your life to read a little bit of books. Even if you started out with one book every quarter, now I'm up to 2 books a month is my goal. And I've been accomplishing that through Audible.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the goal of reading should go in your journal. You should write, how much do you plan to read? Well, 15 books a night, or 15 pages a night, or 15 minutes a night, or 1 chapter a night. My education started after I got my college degree. And what you're talking about reading are foundational books that will give you the basic foundation of knowledge that you need. And once basic knowledge is combined with other basic knowledge, over time, ordinary knowledge becomes extraordinary knowledge.
Yes.
And you'll have what Charlie Munger refers to as this Lollapalooza effect, which is just an extraordinary knowledge that comes from reading different books and allowing the neuronal connections to come together and make this Lollapalooza effect.
Yes.
But yeah, it absolutely starts with making sure that you're reading the right books when you're young, because there are a lot of books that you're going to read in your 30s and 40s and think, oh my God, I wish I had read this in my 20s. Yeah. The best example I can think of is The Power of Now. Have you heard of that book by Eckhart Tolle?
No, I have not.
You're going to wish you read it sooner. It is that good.
That'll be on my next one.
There are many books like that. I had a guy who contacted me last week. He's 40 years old, and he told me he had not read a book since college. And that is not uncommon. It's something like 70% of college grads have not read a nonfiction book. What I told him is that what's most important is that your first book is a page turner that you cannot put down, because developing the habit, much like journaling, is what is most important. So I recommended a few books to him in different categories, which are absolutely for first-time readers. And in nonfiction, it was Man's Search for Meaning. In self-development, it was How to Win Friends and Influence People. In fiction, it was The Da Vinci Code, and that's just based off of my own reading and many friends who've told me that they can't put it down. And I believe there were a few others, but that's so important with the first one. Oh, 40 Tales of the Afterlives.
You just added four
David Eagleman
books to my list, so so now I know. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I could give you books all day. I could even tell you at what stage of your development you should read certain books. This is another great one, Awareness by Anthony DeMello.
Okay.
So many good books out there, and you're going to wish.
More reading then.
Get
so
on
I want to segment into the last part of the show. I'm calling the Fab Five, the last 5 questions I'm going to ask every single guest. So start with number 1. From your journey, is there anything you regret or wish you would have done differently? I know you said just a quote about regretting, but just something that maybe, I guess not really regret, something you learned that you would want to kind of do differently.
I would have studied Spanish at a younger age.
Okay, I tried to learn it. I expected a different answer.
I tried to learn it at 35. I went to school in Mexico, and I was so far behind. I had trouble keeping up, and I've never felt so stupid. And I think there's something inherent in our biology that makes language learning easier when you're younger. So, yeah, that's going to be my answer.
Okay, cool. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 18-year-old self coming right out of high school? I'm leading this question more towards the people that are coming out of high school and they're thinking, man, what do I do?
It's tough to answer because I don't know if you know this, but I turned 40 a few weeks ago, and the night before my 40th birthday, I wrote 40 pieces of life advice for my 20-year-old self.
Oh,
so if it's all right with you, I'll just refer people to that because it'd be hard for me to choose one of the 40.
Okay. Yeah. Tell them where they can find that before we go to the next question.
It's on manoverseas.com. Just type in the search bar, life advice, and it'll come up, but you should see it there on the home page.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to take a look at that now.
Since we're on the topic, I also did a solo podcast episode that dives deeper into the 40 pieces of life advice, because that blog post is by far the most popular blog post that I've had. Well, at least in terms of how quickly it was read.
Yeah.
My most popular blog post ever is called How to Pass a Shit Test, Life's Most Underrated Skill. But give it some time, and I think this life advice will probably be a close second.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to check that out. So moving on to the third question. What is your morning routine, or do you have one?
Sometimes I do. So I guess the answer would be no. Because we stay in different Airbnbs for 30 days at a time, it's hard to get a routine, because, like, for example, we're staying in New Orleans at my mom's house, and it's only because we had a July 15th flight to Europe, but it was canceled because of coronavirus. So when I wake up in the morning, what I do depends on whether or not my mom is up, so
Yeah, makes sense.
so it varies, but I do try to meditate every day and journal, although I don't journal as much as I did when I was in my 20s and early 30s. I make coffee. I drink a bottle of water. Yeah, those things are pretty standard no matter where I'm located.
Okay, cool. Awesome. My next question is, what is your why? Why invest? Why become financially independent? What's the whole why behind your kind of success in your journey?
I ask God to shine through me and be of service to people, and I can best do that when I have full control of my time.
Okay.
So I don't have kids yet, but I look forward to being super dad, because I am financially free and will have more time to spend with my kid that my parents didn't have.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, you look at growing up, or any kid going to school, they have a sporting event. Their parents sometimes tend to make it at halftime because they got caught up at work, So yeah, I love that. And my last question is, what is your definition of a successful life?
When you fulfilled your potential.
How do you know what your potential is?
You have to figure that out for yourself.
Good. I love that, because everybody thinks that there's just a straight out answer, like, hey, here's the map. Step 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's not the case. You have to figure that out all on your own. I love that.
Yeah, it's sort of like meaning. If there was a universal meaning to life, we'd all just give up and do that one thing. But success is personal, just like meaning. So you have to figure out what makes a meaningful life, or what makes a successful life. And success to me is being of service, living a life of significance.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you. Well, hey, Brad, I appreciate your time, coming out and hopping on this podcast with me. So if there's anything else you want to add, feel free. But if not, I think this is the end of the show.
If anybody wants to listen to my podcast, it's on Apple and Spotify, Man Overseas, or my blog is manoverseas.com.
And tell me,
thank you.
Where you usually found? Usually you're active on Facebook, correct?
I am active on Instagram and Twitter at man_overseas.
Awesome. There you go. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate your time coming out again. And have a good day, man. Thank you.
Thank you. You're good at this. I appreciate it. Enjoyed it, man. Take care.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Bye-bye.
Bye.